Welcome to the Power of Zero show. This is your host, best-selling author David McKnight, author of The Power of Zero, Look Before You Lurk, The Volatility Shield, and Tax-Free Income for Life. If you are looking for someone to help you manage all of the pitfalls that stand between you and the 0% tax bracket, why not head over to davidmcknight.com and opt in for a free strategy session. We will connect you with a member of our elite POZ advisor group, among the very best advisors in the nation, trained, vetted, qualified personally by me. If you are a financial advisor looking to up your game and adopt Power of Zero principles in your financial planning practice, head on over to powerofzero.com, opt into the free three-part video series, and we're happy to schedule a phone call with you. Would always love a follow on Twitter. It's at McKnight & Co, at McKnight & Co, or a follow on Instagram. It's David C. McKnight. Today, I'm having an interview with Doug Orchard. You may remember that Doug Orchard was the director of The Power of Zero, The Tax Train is Coming. Doug's got a new movie coming out. It's called The Baby Boomer Dilemma, in which he talks about the choice between the defined benefit plan or the defined contribution plan and the role of guaranteed lifetime income in retirement planning. So sit back and enjoy my interview with Doug Orchard. Doug Orchard, welcome to the Power of Zero show.
Hey, thank you, David. It's great to be here.
Hey, well, I just had a chance to watch your excellent documentary this morning entitled The Baby Boomer Dilemma. And I'm grateful that you're here, and of course, enjoyed collaborating with you on The Power of Zero, The Tax Train is Coming. So I was very impressed. And so I guess my first question right out of the chute is, what prompted you to make this documentary on this particular subject?
Yeah, so this would be all your fault, actually. I mean, really, we started, The Power of Zero came because you called me and said, have you ever thought about making a movie about tax consequences of retirement, the way we're doing it, and its associated with national debt? So, and then for about 3.5 years, Tom Hegna has been talking to me about trying to do something that's more of a general retirement kind of thing. There really wasn't, because of what I do, that was a challenge. And then you referred a couple people who've been looking to have a documentary made really on this topic over to me. They talked to you, and that's why I took their call. And they provided a podcast crowdfunding event from which the funding came and I could make the film. And that happened last January, February.
Okay. So the title of the movie, The Baby Boomer Dilemma, of course, instantly begs the question right out of the chute. What is the dilemma? And as we're introduced to, there's a dramatization. There's a family who is faced with a choice, and the choice is they have to choose between a defined benefit plan or a defined contribution plan. Why is this? And this is really the crux of the movie. Why is this a dilemma? Why do people have a hard time making a choice between this? And why did you base your entire documentary on this particular decision?
Yeah, this really gets into the question of guaranteed versus, fear of missing out. And that's the heart of everything that we're doing. The whole guaranteed portion came in through corporate America because of, as an avenue that we see in the film, because of in World War II, they weren't allowed to recruit people based on compensation. You couldn't recruit, Ford couldn't recruit away from GM, somebody for an extra $10,000 a year. That was illegal during World War II. Price, wage controls were everywhere. But there was nothing that says you couldn't promise them something in retirement. So it was the birth of the corporate pension, which was forever the terrain of insurance companies with annuities. And so that interesting battle came about, and that whole thing evolved, and it was rather fascinating. It was something that I knew nothing about. And I don't think most Americans knew anything about. When we understand the history of how this all comes about, it does create an opportunity to relook at everything and say, are we doing it right now? So really that's the crux of it. Do we go for the big pile of money with a deferred compensation plan, or do we take some type of guaranteed approach? And I'm 52 and I have friends that went with the guaranteed approach, either through sheriffs or army or whatever, and they're already retired. They got everything there. And I'm still working on that pile of money. And somewhere along the way, I thought, maybe going 100% that route wasn't the best way.
Yeah, this movie really resonated with me because, of course, I know you've read my book, Tax-Free Income for Life, and a lot of the principles that all of the experts in your movie talk about are subjects that I address in my book, Tax-Free Income for Life. So it was really fascinating to see all of the experts that really these are the biggest names in retirement planning research, the ones that, you have the father of the 401k, you have people that have done all of this research, Moshe Milevsky, Tom Hegna, David Babel, all who are very instrumental in this entire guaranteed lifetime income movement. And so it's just fascinating to see, names that you've heard. Is fascinating to see them come to life on the screen. Who was the most fascinating person that you interviewed for this movie?
I'm going to break that up in two parts. The best interview I've ever had, and I've been doing films for a long time. I've done several thousand interviews, in my career. The number one interview I've ever done, the most impressive interview I've ever done, was with Professor Olivia Mitchell out of Wharton. She steals the show. She is brilliant upon brilliant. She gets some pretty accolades by Nobel Prize economist and David Babel there at Wharton. They both say some nice things about her. So that was the most impressive interview I've ever had, where somebody was, it was impressive.
Well, what was first? Well, let me back you up there. What was so? And I agree with you. She was impressive. She's really a pioneer in this entire area. What impressed you about? She's a lady. I'm guessing in her mid to late 60s, and she's at the Wharton School of Business. What impressed you about her?
That's going to be hard for me to actually verbalize. But when you ask someone a question, and you have the one take wonders, people who are usually, there's someone like yourself who's used to saying things. Tom Hegna, you guys could kick things out in a very impressive way. She does not speak on topics all the time. But she's so well researched on it and has her whole life. And she was so far ahead of the game, even coming out of college. Both her parents were economists, and this was her whole life. And so she had such a depth on every topic I brought up and on all the topics of the film. Okay. So the film does a deep dive into pensions, both corporate and public, which are really two animals separate. It takes a deep dive into Social Security, of which she's the world's expert. And the Social Security is a worldwide problem. It's not just a US problem. That's all tied into the baby boom problem that's worldwide. We didn't talk much about 401ks and 403bs, but she definitely understands that, especially particularly because the 403 or the 403A is inside all the state pensions. And then as it relates to annuities, wow. The research and peer-reviewed things that she's done, according to Dr. David Babel, she's the one that discovered that you can actually draw more income in retirement by incorporating an annuity than you could by going with mutual funds, stocks alone. You actually take home up to 40% more money. You can spend 40% more. So whatever your pile is, which is fascinating to me, whatever that pile is, you could actually spend 40% more in retirement with an annuity being part of it than going 100% stocks and bonds and all that stuff. And that's a message I don't feel like Americans understood, and she could back that up. So I don't know. I came across that way. I do have extended interviews also with the film that I couldn't fit in with her. She's a fascinating person. And by the way, this was the second attempt to get her for a film. I did go to her for your film. I wanted to talk to her about Social Security in that film, and I could not get. She didn't get. That she's here because Dr. David Babel got her for me in this movie.
Yeah, we all know how this works. Is you get one person, and that helps get the foot in the door for the next person, and then you sort of work your way up the chain. I do have to say that it was really interesting for all the annuity skeptics out there, for those people who think that it's stock market or bust. You see some of the smartest people on the planet, and they look right into the camera and they say, "I have 14 annuities." Why do I have 14 annuities? Because I've done the math 12 ways from Sunday. And I know that this is the means by which I will get more retirement income than any other way. And so it's really it's really eye-opening to see all of these experts chime in on the subject of guaranteed lifetime income. So
the other part of your question I didn't answer, and that was I broke it up. The other person was Dr. David Babel, who persuaded me the most. All right. So Dr. David Babel is an economist out of Berkeley who was recruited away by Wharton, just so everyone knows the history, because it's not in the movie. And the dean at Wharton wanted to, he did a survey, and Wharton was at that time ranked 7th in the United States in MBA programs. He wanted to be number 1. So he went on an acquisition binge, he said, and went and bought it in a year. So he gave them double the salary of what Babel was getting out of Berkeley. So he took it. He said, "I'm going to pay you the same as what you're getting." They go, "Why would I do it?" He goes, "I'm going to pay you twice as often." So, and then for a short time, he went over to Goldman Sachs, and Goldman Sachs sent up the insurance services division, of which they put David Babel as the head. And within a year, he made them number 1 in that space globally. So he's number, and the big interesting thing here is his dissertation was on inflation. And when I started this movie, nobody cared about inflation, a year ago, and now we do. And he knows everything about inflation, and he put all his money into annuities, and he has this whole strategy. And I found that fascinating, because most people would say that's not where you'd put your money, and yet here's the person who his entire career looked at the question, and that's where he put it. And all the professors in the film found him beyond interesting. They all were very familiar with what Dr. David Babel did for himself in retirement. And most professors, by the way, in the space privately email him when it's time for them to retire and ask him, "Hey, what did you do? Can you explain to me?" Even though they have these very complex algorithms, he says they're just too complex to actually do. You can make more money. You can show that in a paper that this is the future, that you can make more money, but pragmatically, nobody actually gets it because it's way too complex. And when you incorporate fees and all those other things, and then that awesome money manager you had, if he's really good, he was going to get a job somewhere else. So now you're stuck with whoever. And he just goes through this whole thing, and he came up with this strategy that I found very fascinating. Very fascinating. And he sat with me for 4 hours on his couch before I was allowed to film him, show me all the charts and graphs, and wanted to look at me eyeball to eyeball to make sure that he believed that I believed.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? The interview wasn't going to happen until that happened, because he felt this was supposed to happen. Like, this was a super important message.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I was struck by something that Mosh Milevsky said, and he talked about how economists disagree regularly on just about everything. They disagree on inflation, whether we're going to have inflation or deflation, the rate at which the economy is going to grow. They disagree on all sorts of things. But when you get them all into the room together, the one thing they tend to agree on more than any other thing is the mathematical value of having guaranteed lifetime income as part of your retirement plan. So I just thought that was really, really telling.
His phrase was that it's the most efficient method to distribute retirement or wealth in retirement, the most efficient. And so evidently those who really do the math, and then truthfully, most people don't. All right. Most people don't do it. Everyone talks, those selling it on stocks and whatever, everyone, they argue, but for those who actually do it, and all of them, evidently, we haven't found that dissenting voice to argue that it's not the most efficient. And that was fascinating. And so, yeah, they all own it. Like every single one of them. I mean, people don't understand how much Bill Sharp sold his business for. I mean, he sold his business for a lot of money. So these people were very wealthy. If you do the math of Dr. David Babel, you'd see that it's over $4.5 million he's got stuffed into annuities. And you're sitting there going, well, that's way beyond. A lot of people say, oh, you should only have this much. Well, some people feel very comfortable to put it there for a reason. And his approach was very interesting, as you probably thought.
Yeah. I mean, he went through and he talked about how what portion of an annuity is covered, by the federal government. It's, in his state, I guess it's 300,000. So he could get 300,000 per, on himself in a particular company. He could get 300,000 on his wife. And then that's all he could do with that company. And then he'd have to go to a different company and get 300,000. So not only is he mathematically and efficiently trying to draw as much retirement income, but he's trying to do it in a very safe way because he recognizes that things can happen. Insurance companies aren't guaranteed to be solvent for forever. Let's talk a little bit about the 401k. You interviewed the father of the 401k. And one of the messages that came through was that the 401k is a disaster for the average investor. Can you unpack that a little bit?
Well, first off, Ted Bennett, the father of 401k, he pointed out the good that the 401ks have done in that by having default savings, he's helped. That's created a roughly $15 trillion of savings over the history of the 401k.
Right.
And that's a lot of money.
Right.
And one could argue not all of that would have been saved because of the default savings approach that was there. At the same time, he's the one that said it would be a disaster to leave it all of that accumulated dollars at risk. Like that, he says, I'm very concerned about someone getting close to retirement, in retirement, or soon after retirement, having all their money at risk. Like that's an annuity. And he talked about the value of an annuity. So what I found is this: whenever you get to people at his level, this black and white talk that's just, it's this way or it's this way, it's all stock or it's all annuity, that's gone. No one talks like that at their level. They look at this and they say, can this be helpful? And they look at the math and say, yeah. And so he says that, and most of them, even in the accumulation phase, this is the other thing. They kind of feel, most of them, that there should be some annuitization, using some of those vehicles in the accumulation years as well, not just decumulation, but as it relates to, and so this is before retirement, as you're getting close, you don't leave it all at risk because, you have it all at risk. And if you lost 20, 30% getting close to retirement, he says it's impossible to make it up. You can't do it.
Yeah. So that brings us to a part of the interview where we discuss this red zone, as it were, when you get within several years of retirement, and you're planning on retiring. In fact, the dramatization talks about a couple who thinks that they've got retirement all set. They get within 2 months of retirement, the stock market takes a spill, and all of a sudden they can't retire. So you talk about this red zone. It starts a couple of years before you retire, ends a couple of years after you retire. What did you learn about sequence of return risk and the red zone, and why guaranteed lifetime income can help with that particular risk?
Yeah. So the whole story with sequence of returns is, as things are going up, if you're 25, 35 right now, and you're sitting there going, the stock market is it still going to go up? Or are we going to go down before we go up? And what's going to happen? Generally speaking, people say, stick to your plan. You just put X dollars or X percent of your income every month into that thing. There's going to be months that the stock market tanks. Those are good years because that same dollar amount is going to buy you more shares those months. And then there's going to be months that the stock market is pretty high. Well, you like your balance, that's good. But over time, the accumulation will work as those charts show. You just keep putting it in, it keeps growing, everything looks great. Everything changes when you start decumulating. Those rules no longer apply, and whatever rules there were, they work against you. So in the decumulation years, as it goes down, let's say the stock market drops 20%, and you need to take out your typical 5% value that year to pay yourself to live, or whatever it is you're trying to do, 2% or whatever. Well, you have fewer shares available. Well, the value of those, you have to sell more shares, a bigger percentage of your pile to get that same amount. And as that keeps happening, if it happens within 10 years, either way of that retirement, you're done. You're not going to hit that goal. It's impossible. The math doesn't work. They used to say 5 years each way. Now they're looking at it's 10 years each way. So the bottom line is, it would, and then a lot of people say, well, some people have so much money. Well, I would like to interject one thing. In the 1990s, I made way more money than I make right now, or ever since. I happened to be this tech whiz kid, and it doesn't matter what it was, but I was chairman of a streaming media company, and VCs were buying in. My stock was paper value worth $28 million on that one company alone. Plus, I made all that money in the 90s, and I stuffed as much as I could in a 401k, and it was all in the market. And I was told by Tom Sullivan, a radio talk show host who was out of Sacramento at the time and a financial advisor, that when you're young in your 20s, particularly, you should be high risk because you got time to make up for it. So when the NASDAQ dropped, the NASDAQ actually went down 90%. And it didn't fully recover until 2017. So, I lost all my money basically. And I've never made it up. And I'm 52 today. So that actually is not even a true statement. You could take more risk. You got more time to work and redo it and make up money that's lost. But it's always, when money's at risk, it's at risk. And we should understand that.
Yeah. I love this movie because it's the, when you take this movie and you blend it together with The Power of Zero, The Tax Train is Coming, which makes the case that tax rates in the future are likely to be dramatically higher than they are today, then you get basically my most recent book, which is Tax-Free Income for Life, which is, yes, guaranteed lifetime income. Yes, make sure you're covering your retirement shortfall, and that whatever your retirement shortfall is, you take your lifestyle needs and you subtract out your pension and you subtract out your Social Security, whatever's left over. That's the amount that should be covered by a guaranteed lifetime income. The only thing that I add in my book, Tax-Free Income for Life, is that if you can do all of that, if you can draw your guaranteed lifetime income out of your tax-free bucket, then you're not exposed to tax rate risk, which is, of course, what we talked about in the Tax Train is Coming, and you don't cause Social Security taxation. And so I would just recommend that people, if they have a chance, watch The Power of Zero, The Tax Train is Coming, and then watch this as sort of a sequel to that movie. And then you really are covering all of your bases, as it were, and you get the full retirement planning picture.
Yeah.
Let's talk. You used sort of a tool in this movie that you did not use in The Power of Zero, The Tax Train is Coming, and that is you used a dramatization that sort of was a thread that wove its way throughout the documentary. Can you talk about what went into your decision to use a dramatization and sort of how you arrived at that decision?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I got COVID really bad in October a year ago, and I had a chronic fatigue syndrome for 2 months after. I got to just look at the ceiling for 2 straight months. I got enough energy to watch The Social Dilemma on Netflix, which is an excellent movie, and told everyone they needed to watch this thing. And of course, that was a high budget. I mean, that's probably the highest budget documentary I'm aware of ever made. But they had real actors. And they have that storyline, and I found it so compelling. It's something I've wanted to do. And I decided I wanted to do that moving forward, at least a little bit. And so when it came to this topic and I was looking at this, I had already decided it was something I wanted to explore. And but with this topic, it was either going to be an insane amount of charts and graphs, which only appeals to a certain personality type and loses a lot of other audience, or it needed to actually have a very, real human element. And so in finding those actors and finding the right set and what I was going to do and was difficult. And these were actors who do a lot for Disney. There's their popular YouTube family called Sunshine Mafia. They got 1 million followers or whatever. And he used to be a popular singer in the early 2000s for a band called Jericho Road. What I did is I wrote a script, I showed it to him, but then I said, okay, when we go out to film, you cannot memorize this thing. I just want you to look at it a few times and that's it. Well, what are we going to do? I'm going to do something different. I just want you to kind of know this. So they read it, they kind of understood that. And then they had to leave it in the car and I had to leave it in the car. And this was the gutsy part of it. And I wanted to explain the situation to them and then have them live it. And so when you watch the final scene, people watch this and everybody's mouth drops. Like, wow. That's like,
it was
wow.
shocking. It was shocking.
It was wow. Well, they've had enough experience themselves. We all have with the kinds of concepts, the emotions there, it lives out. And so what you saw was how people would react in those circumstances and how we, and these are very realistic things. So it wasn't convoluted. It wasn't fake. There was nothing fake. Nothing felt fake. It was because it was real. I mean, that's their whole family. All those kids are their kids. This kid makes a comment about football camp. He's just a sophomore. We're in the fall, sophomore of high school, and he's already got scholarship offered to D1 football schools. We were going to go to Mexico, to Cancun, and film them, but that whole thing got nixed because that kid was in Junior Olympics and he was being tested daily for COVID, and he came up positive the morning we were leaving for Cancun. So I had to rewrite the ending of the movie and a lot of fun stuff. But I wanted people to feel the emotion of it because I'm dissatisfied with the results thus far in the films I'm making. I make films that have the potential to move the needle for society. They all tie back to the national debt in some way. And we're doing nothing as a country. Nothing's happening. We're escalating the pace. And I'll tell you, David Walker, I've never seen him in that form before. And I sat there in his kitchen with him. I said, we've done this before. I said, nothing's happened. You've done all this. You've done all this work your entire career. Look where we're at. How does that feel? Do you have a message? And he was just, boom. He was great. It was great.
Yeah, and I had David Walker on my own podcast a few months ago, as you know, and yeah, I said, look, Dave, about let's see here, about 15 years ago, you told CNN that tax rates would have to double or we go broke as a country. You told that to PBS as well. I said, how do you feel about that statement? And I said, you still stand by it? And he says, not only do I stand by it, but I will tell you that tax rates today, take this to the bank, they will never, ever be as low as they are today. So you couple that with the message of guaranteed lifetime income, and it can inform a lot of your retirement strategies, which is, of course, what I try to get through in my book, Tax-Free Income for Life. Well, one other question I had was, you interviewed a lot of top experts in the field, and you're obviously not a neophyte when it comes to retirement planning. You've hung out with me for a long time. We crisscrossed the country, 2018, interviewing all of the best experts in the nation as it relates to the national debt and the future of tax rates. So it's not like you are a beginner when it comes to this type of stuff. So I guess my question for you is, after interviewing all these experts, was there anything that surprised you over the course of these interviews?
Yeah, I never planned on owning an annuity before your book came out. Mm-hmm. I was surprised you're writing one. Mm-hmm. I thought, oh, wait, annuities are bad because, you're going to pay taxes, right? And this was before you wrote your book that explains, hey, here's how you can actually stuff it in in a Roth, and you can do it this way, and here's how you can get money out, and and so I didn't realize you could do that, and I mean, I knew life insurance was great, but I just didn't realize the value of this, and my entire value structure as far as what I value in retirement, has nothing to do with some pile of money anymore. It has everything to do with is my lifestyle needs there? Are they there? Like, I know how I want to live. Is that met for sure? And when I say for sure, we got a rocky road ahead of us. I mean, is it been able to navigate me through most of it, or most things? And I don't see how you can get there without annuity now. And not one, a lot of annuities. Like, I'm not a one annuity guy. That I also was convinced on.
Yeah, I love the part where David Babel, his wife will come up to him and say, hey, it looks like, between inflation and additional expenses, what the income streams that we have coming in from these annuities aren't quite enough to crack our nut. And he'll say, okay, well, let's go annuitize one more annuity. And I think as of right now, he's annuitized 7 or 8 annuities. And of course, we find out at the end of the movie that David Babel died. It was interesting that Zoom meeting you had with him, where you said you were circle back with him in the spring, and he says, well, just to be totally forthright with you, I may not be alive when you circle back with me. So that was an interesting development.
And he wouldn't have been, because I didn't end up getting back because of COVID until June. So he had passed away already. He would not have been in the movie. I just went out 3 days later. I would have been there the next day, but he had chemo the next day, and he needed a couple of days off. Yeah. He definitely looked a little worse for the wear. He looked a little bedraggled when you interviewed him. But he was, I just don't know how you can be an annuity skeptic after you see the smartest people in the planet laying out the case mathematically. It's not just the psychological and even the health and longevity benefits associated with having an annuity. I've talked about how Freakonomics has made the case that annuities make you live longer. It's this idea that the longer you live, the more money you're going to pull out. That's true. These are just true. Yeah, these are the he's making the purely mathematical case for an annuity to say, look, this will give you more money than any other method on the planet. So it's just, well done, Doug. It was just, you made a foolproof case, an airtight case, if you will, for incorporating guaranteed lifetime income annuities into your retirement plan. So I guess my question for you now is, what's next on your horizon? What mountain are you going to climb and conquer now? Well, I'm actually editing my next film right now. I shot both films at the same time. That was my only month. June was your only month to film, by the way, in America, without restrictions in New York and everything else. It opened up. And most times I was showing up the day they released their mask requirement or whatever, and I could actually show up and I'd be filming and everyone walking around like that. And then if they came back. But it's a film called Mergers and Acquisitions, M&A. It's called M&A. That's it. That's M&A. Mm-hmm. And that'll be early next year. It'll be done, or some point. And the reason this is relevant, it's still in the baby boomer camp. I almost could have included this part of the movie. And the reason being is 78% of all businesses right now in America that have 3 employees or more are owned by baby boomers. And if you take a look at the companies that are actually worth the most, you'll find that number is a lot higher percentage. So all of those businesses most likely will be sold over the next decade. And if you add up that value of that, that's $10 trillion of economic value that will be change hands. But here's the problem. In that bracket, financial bracket of businesses that size, only 20% successfully sell ever. So, and then what do you do with this big pile of money, right? So it gets back to that same issue. These people they were living off that money. They chose to invest in a career that they could sell at the end rather than just get paid. but they didn't have retirement as they go. Generally speaking, most of them don't. So it's a really interesting film where it goes. We do cover some of the similar issues. The congressman in this film, Mike Gallagher, who's a PhD, international relations, smart guy, actually, very smart. He is the individual that's part of that bipartisan commission. There's one Republican, one Democrat, one independent, to create the structure on how we're going to deal with our trusts, highway trust, Social Security, Medicare, So how are we going to fix those? So they're supposed to set up a structure of how we're going to look at the question. That's it. Like, that's where we're at. We are so far down the road from ever actually coming up with a solution, let alone voting on a solution and fixing it. It was very, very scary. So, so that's my next film. And one other big takeaway I got to share is Professor Kotlikoff in The Power of Zero. He was a little bit on the fringe from the normal economists when he was talking about the fiscal gap, that difference between what's on our books and what we as a country have actually obligated ourselves with on future promises. Like, the rest of us would have to show that on the balance sheet, but we don't. Other countries do, we don't. So what's changed when I interviewed the economists this round? They all were there. That was normal. People who used to sound kind of crazy in 2006, now we are the top of the top saying the exact same things. So when you're going around saying, oh, I think that we might see higher tax rates, the truth is, and they all said this, they said that if we were to tax everybody at 100% for the next 10 years, we still would have a tough time. Not eat for 10 years. That's in your movie. Then we'd be close if we just didn't add that extra 10 trillion just now. So it's a really ugly situation. So all we're going to try to do now is just not pay off anything, but just keep it from falling apart. And so the whole tax strategy will be getting enough taxes out there so other countries will respect it. And a lot of people, this modern economic theory, well, if it's so modern and it doesn't matter, then why do we even have tax at all? Why are we raising taxes right now?
Hey, man, they've got an answer for all that stuff. And that's a great opportunity for me to plug my next book, which is The Infinity Code, where it's a Dan Brown type novel, suspense, mystery, thriller, where a secret cabal of Harvard graduates are trying to foist modern monetary theory in a very secretive and subversive way on the American government. And there's two protagonists alone who can stop them. And so it's a great way to teach the dangers of modern monetary theory, but do so in a compelling read that sort of shepherds you through the plot. Well, in closing, Doug, you've been great. Where can my listeners go to listen or to watch your latest film, The Baby Boomer Dilemma?
Yeah, no matter when you're listening to this, all the links will always launch off of boomermovie.com. And because there's going to be additional places as it comes up, depending on when you're hearing this. But if you go to www.boomermovie.com.
Okay, so that is it, folks. That was my interview with director Doug Orchard. If you need help navigating all of these pitfalls that stand between you and the 0% tax bracket, you want to mitigate longevity risk and tax rate risk within the very same financial plan, you can head over to davidmcknight.com. Happy to hook you up with one of the member of our elite POZ advisor group, trained, vetted, qualified personally by me. And if you're a financial advisor, head on over to powerzero.com and check in with our 3-part video series. We'd be happy to schedule a call with you. If you are a financial advisor and would like to watch my movie, The Power of Zero, The Tax Train is Coming, for free, you can head over to thetaxtrain.com. That's thetaxtrain.com. Thanks, everybody, for being on the podcast this week, and we will look forward to chatting with you same time next week.